You know, we have a lot of really cool people that come to the Malibu Guru podcast and the KC Aviation YouTube channel. But today we've got somebody that's at the very top of the organization and somebody that's humble and smart and really passionate about the M-Class community. And that's Mike Nichols. Mike, with PMOPA, you're the CEO of PMOPA and the CEO of the PMOPA Safety and Education Foundation. You got quite the title here.
It's a big title for an excellent organization, great group of people in our community.
Yeah, you know, it really is. I will tell you, the it's PMOPA now. It was MMOPA for a long time, but it's PMOPA. I'm so glad y'all changed the name.
Thanks.
I think y'all did a good job. I think you had a little hand in that.
I did. It's actually one of the first questions I asked the board when I was interviewing for the position. Why is this one of the few type clubs that doesn't have the manufacturer's name in the name of the association? And the answer was, we don't know. Not sure that Piper will go for it. So I said, if Piper would go for it, do you think the community would want that and support it? And the board said, yes, absolutely. Good luck with that. Piper said it was a no-brainer. Yeah, they don't know why people didn't think of that before. And it makes perfect sense.
It does. You know, if you go back into the world, why were we MMOPA? Because in the early days, it was Malibu Mirage. There was no Meridian, Jet Prop, Matrix, M500, M600, M700. You know, there's none of that.
Precisely.
It was Malibu Mirage, and that was it. And we just kept the name, even though we added all these different airplanes to it.
Right.
Why not hinge the whole thing to Piper?
Right. Yeah. I suspect Piper hasn't said this, but I suspect that because at the time that MMOPA was formed, Piper's future viability was in question. So was the Piper brand going to be there in 5 years and 10 years or not? Now Piper is on very sound footing, 85 plus year history, makes perfect sense. They're going to be part of our community going forward. We're part of their community. It's a good ecosystem.
It's a symbiotic thing. All right, before we get now, because we were talking about guitar tuning before we ever get started here, I want to go back into the early days of you. Where are you from? Where were you raised? Tell me, I want to get to know you. Tell me, where did you come along from?
Yeah, I grew up in Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Really?
It's a great place to grow up.
There's a great song about that place.
There is, yeah. I say it's a great place to grow up, but I'm all grown up now. So it's a nice place, and it gave me some really great opportunities to spread my wings and learn what I wanted to be, who I wanted to be, where I wanted to go. And I knew that Allentown wasn't the place I wanted to stay for the long term.
Right.
I fell in love with DC at an early age. My family would go on camping vacations, stayed at a campground outside of Washington, D.C. in Maryland, took the metro into Washington, D.C., and I was probably 10, 11 years old and just fell in love with Washington and decided I wanted to move there when I was grown up.
I bet I've been there 5 times. Washington, D.C. is one of these places that just has so much. I mean, a lot of it's government related, but I'm talking about the museums and the places to see and the monuments and all this. It's exactly. Totally worth it. I mean, it's where our government is occurring, but there's cool stuff there. Even if I'm not talking about Republican or Democrat. There's a bunch of division that goes on there, but I'm talking about things like the Lincoln Memorial and the World War II.
The Air and Space Museum.
There you go. I mean, all this stuff is there, and it's cool.
It is.
It's a neat place to be a part of.
It's a beautiful city for people to visit. It's a fantastic place to live. And also, being in the Mid-Atlantic, I love having 4 seasons. So the fact that I can experience a little bit of everything, close to New York City, close to New England, close to Florida, easy jump over to Europe when I want to go there, which I try to do often. So DC is just a wonderful place for me to be.
Okay. How'd you get into aviation though? Because you are a pilot.
I am.
And this is one of the cool parts about this whole thing is you don't own a PA-46. No one's expecting you to own a PA-46, but we are expecting a pilot, and you are a pilot.
Yes.
That's right. What do you fly?
I have a Grumman Tiger.
All right.
Yeah. It's a fun airplane. My flying is day VMC. That's what I'm comfortable with. I am instrument rated, but I am not current or proficient, and I take that very seriously. So flying for me is just fun, and the Grumman Tiger is a great fit for me.
It's a great airplane. I mean, it's actually a pretty good performer considering the horsepower that it's got. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, a person can look very cool in a Grumman.
Yeah.
I mean, in other words, it's a cool looking airplane.
Yeah. I got that canopy to slide back.
Excellent. Exactly.
Just need a scarf like Snoopy wears.
Yeah. It's not bad at all. And you fly often and still doing it?
I'm still flying, not as often as I'd like. My goal is to fly at least 50 hours a year, which, for a PA-46, that's a little light, but for Grumman Tiger, it's fine.
Yeah.
And I do, on average, about 60 hours a year. So I'd like to take it on some cross-country trips, had a really great trip for a meeting down in Amelia Island, Florida at the end of January. So got to fly down there and back. That was a really cool experience. Actually bought the plane not too far from here. It was in Fredericksburg, Texas, where I bought it. So
Fredericksburg's the home of the Hangar Hotel.
it is.
And
That's where I stayed. Exactly.
Cool airport. Yeah. Well,
Good, cool town too.
Cool town.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Back to Allentown.
yeah, Allentown's where you grew up and were raised, and then what happened?
Yeah. So before we left Allentown, before we leave Allentown, I was interested in aviation, but I don't know why I was interested in aviation. I was involved in Boy Scouts. My scout troop wasn't very active. It folded. Next one wasn't very active. It folded. And I wanted something more. I didn't know what I wanted to do for my career. So I thought about Explorer Scouts. So I did Business Explorer Scouts on Wednesday evenings, and Thursday evenings I did Aviation Explorer Scouts.
Wow.
When I was in high school, there was a career day, and I went to talk to the Air Force to learn about what is a career in the Air Force like. And then a couple tables down was Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. I went and I talked with them. I walked home from school that day, and I thought, I don't want to fly professionally. I want to go into business. I want to be successful in business. I want to make enough money that I can learn how to fly and do it on my own schedule.
Right.
And I've been very fortunate that that's how everything played out.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many people have done that, and I think they're very smart to have done it. I did the exact opposite. I've got into aviation thinking, how do you make money flying?
Right.
Not thinking, how can I go make money and then fly? Mm-hmm. There's a distinct advantage to making money and then flying, meaning you go on your own terms, you go where you want. All this. It's a different way of looking at it, but I think you actually were onto something there. And if you look at the PA-46 world, most people are like you, meaning that they're most went into the world, made a widget or a service or did something great that allowed them to have money to be able to fly.
That's
so
right.
more of them are like you, where they went in to do well at business to allow them to fly. Then were like me that became a professional. In this case, I'm a professional flight instructor. I think that's my, when I kick the bucket, I want to be thought of as a flight instructor, not as an examiner or as a pro pilot. I think my place in the world is flight instructor, and that's different. Your place in the world is more leadership, administration, and business. I think business is probably the right answer. Business.
I think so too. Exactly. So most of my career has been in nonprofit association management, but my perspective on that is that's just a tax status. The nonprofit organization is best when it's run like a business. It needs a strategic plan. It needs a board of directors that's actively engaged. It needs to execute on that plan. And that's exactly what we've done in every nonprofit association I've been involved with, because that makes sense. That's how businesses are successful.
Okay, so I got to go back here. Well, give me when we talk about nonprofits, because you went to school and somewhere and then got into the business world, into the nonprofit. What nonprofits?
Yeah, so I'll back up and started college. I went to a state school in Pennsylvania, not far from where I grew up. I was the first in my family to go to college.
What's the name of it?
Kutztown University.
All right.
There was a cute little airport, past tense, unfortunately, right at the edge of the college campus. And I wish I had taken the step to hang out there and go there, but it just seemed like a place that wasn't accessible. The pilots just do the pilots, and I was a college student, and it wasn't like there was a welcoming invitation to hang out there. The airport's now closed, which is always unfortunate to lose an airport, but I still had that connection to aviation, loved when the airplanes would take off and hear that sound, but I was focused on international business, which was my major. I was minored in German, and in my German class, a woman in my German class was a non-traditional student, so she had gotten married, had kids, and then went back to college, and she was studying to be a German teacher. And Kutztown was started actually as a school for teachers. It was called the Keystone Normal School. So this woman had a husband who was in the Vietnam War, had gotten his pilot's license, and owned a Piper Cherokee 180. She knew that I was interested in aviation, so she said, "Let me ask my husband if he would take us flying." I thought that would be amazing.
Yeah.
My first time in a general aviation airplane. I'd been on a commercial airliner before, but first time in a general aviation. And we flew from the Reading, Pennsylvania airport to Wilmington, Delaware. We had dinner at an Aero Squadron restaurant, which was so cool. And then we did a night flight home. There were 4 of us in the airplane, another guy from the German class who actually enrolled in the Air Force after college. I don't know what's happened to him. It'd be neat to find out. And I was just in awe. I was amazed at that feeling. And I sat in the back and just seeing the plane take off and
You
getting
saw
in
the third
air.
dimension.
Yeah.
You saw the third dimension.
Yeah.
That's it. That's that.
So I had a picture of that flight, and I did an internship in Germany. And that was a really cool experience. I worked in the marketing and advertising department of a company that makes deep frozen desserts. And the universe does really fun things for us sometimes. And the boss for that internship was a private pilot and a member of a flying club. So my introduction to business aviation was flying with him to do a product packaging shoot, to meet with a vendor for another element. And we flew 3 times, I think it was, when I was there for that 2-month internship, and it was exciting. Very different than flying in the United States, but exciting nonetheless.
Yeah.
So my first 2 flights were in Piper's, Introduction to Business Aviation with Piper. So I think it's natural that I ended up at the Piper M-Class Owners and Pilots Association.
Yeah.
But there's a lot in between there. So.
Sure.
Oh, but it was what that picture that I took when we were leaving Reading Airport. I brought that with me to the internship. So it was what he saw. They said, "Oh, you like aviation?" And that's why he invited me to go along. Nobody else in the company got to fly with him. So it was pretty
It seems to me like so far I don't know if it's a chance meeting or just the right meeting where people recognize, hey, this guy's interested and we're going to do something, gave you flights, brought you in and gave you the opportunity to be subjected to aviation. That's what we need. Ambassadors.
Exactly. And we're hoping that the convention this year will have Darren Pleasant, who is the brand new CEO and president of AOPA.
Yes.
Who owns a Piper Meridian, very passionate for general aviation. And that's what some of what I talked about with him was, how do we get more people to inspire the next generation?
That's right.
And he talks about fences around airports and how they're barriers. Yeah. And how do we remove those barriers? Not necessarily removing the fences, but being welcoming and doing activities that we get that next generation of pilots. So come to the convention in September. Hopefully Darren will make his schedule work that he can join us and
I got to meet Darren at, of all things, the National Warbirds Operator Conference in WAC.
Yeah.
And he showed up and gave a nice talk, and I got to meet him. I'm pretty impressed with the dude.
Me too.
I mean, this is. I've always been impressed with AOPA, but this guy's impressive.
He is. He's the 6th president of AOPA, and I've had an opportunity to meet and get to know 4 of them. And him being the 4th one, and each one has had their skill set and had a particular thing they brought to the association at a particular time that was important for the community.
Right.
Darren is the right person for today and the next, hopefully, 10 years. I think he's just dynamic.
I don't know if it's more impressive that he's there or that he's the 8th in the long, however long they've been around.
70, 80 years. Right, exactly.
It's just as impressive as I can be. Somewhere along this whole thing, you ended up at NBAA.
Yeah.
Okay. How'd we get there?
Right. Well, so I graduated from college in 1992, and for those who are listening to the podcast that are old enough to remember, that was an economic downturn, recession, and it was a tough employment time. So I was doing a job search from Pennsylvania, looking for a job in DC, and I just decided I'm going to pick up and move to DC. So I moved to DC in October of '92, and I worked a couple retail jobs while I was looking for a full-time job. And a woman that I worked with in one of the retail jobs said to me, "Have you thought about working in an association before?" I said, "No, never thought about it. Really didn't. I knew what they were, but didn't know exactly to the extent they were serving people and communities and societies, etc." So I thought, well, I'll look into it. And she said, "Well, my son works for the American Association of Blood Banks. There's an association for everything, Joe.
Okay.
And they might need some help. Can you give me your resume?" So I turned in my resume and had an interview and was hired for my first association job as a coordinator of education programs. So it was not exactly what I wanted to do, considering you don't like needles, I don't like needles. So I was coordinating a certification program for blood banks and a blood donor phlebotomist certificate program. Before I got hired there in 1993, I don't think I knew what a phlebotomist was.
I couldn't tell you now, except for the context of this discussion.
So pretty interesting. Not what I wanted to do long term. So I left there and got a corporate job, and I was working for a company in the corporate environment, doing work with people who were let go from their jobs working in outplacement. So we were providing them services with resume updating. There were career counselors who would coach them through interview questions and what they want to do next in their careers. And that was a cool place to work because it gave me an opportunity to go for walks at lunchtime with career counselors and get free career counseling. Very young, early in my career. And one of the things that I discovered through that process was I really enjoyed working with volunteers who were passionate about their industry, their profession, their aviation. For us is not necessarily a profession, but it's something that we're passionate about. And there's a reason for us to come together as a group and an association. And that's inspiring to me to see when people are willing to donate their time to make it better for everybody else in the community.
Right.
So I decided that I was going to leave the corporate thing and go back into nonprofit association work. So it happened to be in 1997. The telecom industry was booming. The Telecom Act of 96 had created all this competition. So it was breaking up the big bells, and really neat time to be in telecom. So I worked in a telecom association for about 5.5 years. And what was cool is I left the corporate world to go work for this telecom association. I already had a car payment I was comfortable with. I already owned a condo I was comfortable with the mortgage payment. And I almost doubled my salary when I changed jobs. Now I had something that I never had before in my life: disposable income.
And a need for an airplane.
Yeah. So I learned how to fly.
Perfect.
Yeah, it was great. So my first flying lessons were at Manassas Airport, and I learned early on that there are some really good flight instructors, and there are people who are just checking boxes and
not good
building hours, and they're not there because they have a passion for flight instruction.
That's right.
So I fired my first 2 flight instructors and was thinking that maybe I wasn't cut out to be a pilot. I was really fortunate in that since I was working in downtown DC, and this was pre 9/11, this is 1999, the FAA had a flying club, and the FAA Flying Club had a ground school that anybody in the community could do ground school at FAA headquarters. So I was sitting there, and before class started, just commiserating with some other of the students who were struggling with flying lessons. And I said, I'm not sure that I'm cut out for this. And one of the people said, well, you should fire your flight instructor. I said, I've already fired 2. I don't have one right now. And she said, let me give you a name. And she gave me the name of somebody who worked in flight standards, who was a part-time flight instructor. And I called her. She said, let's get together Friday or Saturday. We'll get together. We'll go for a flight, see how it goes. And if we like each other, then I'll be your instructor. She didn't have any other students. She owned a Cessna 150, November 3253 Victor.
Okay.
And we flew together, and she said, okay,
I'll take you.
I have a lot of work to do to unteach all the bad stuff you were taught.
Right.
But I enjoyed flying with you. I think that you're going to be a good pilot, and I would like to be your instructor. But it's on a condition that you treat my airplane like it's your airplane. I want you to understand what it means to own an airplane, to fly an airplane, to operate that airplane, to understand how airplanes should be maintained. You have to be all in on this if I'm going to be your instructor.
Wow.
What a great opportunity.
So
I was helping.
Whoever this person is, that's a wonderful person.
She rest in peace. She was amazing, just a wonderful, wonderful person. And actually, I'll say that, it's easy to bash the federal government. It's easy to bash the people who work there. But we just heard from an air traffic controller today who goes to work every day to make our lives safe.
That's right.
And there are a lot of people like Holly today, the air traffic controller, like Ruth, who is my flight instructor, who did work really hard to make sure that things were good for us. Sure. So we can, it's easy to throw out the baby with the bathwater, but let's protect the babies too.
It is so easy to do to bash the government. And to be brutally honest, I think if you want excellence, you're not going to use. It's not going to come from a federal system. But at the point, you got to have a federal system. You got to have a government that's going to be able to, and you need good people there to be able to do it. The cool thing is, there are people out there that want to be a part of that, and we want them to be a part of it because we want good people there. There are great people doing good work as under the banner of the government.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
We don't. And that's,
do we want it to be more efficient? Do we want it to be smaller? Yes. I think everybody's in agreement on that.
One of the things you mentioned why you're here. You're here at Lufkin today.
Yeah.
We had M class today, and you showed up for M class. I wanted to thank you for coming to M class. Both you came and John came. John's the president of the board of directors of PMOPA.
Yes.
And both of y'all had choices about where you could be, and you were here. So were 74 other people, and I think it was 47 PA 46s that we had here.
That's impressive.
Impressive turnout, and I gave a talk, Deanna gave a talk. We had Jim Ratliff here, who we both know,
Yep.
gave a talk. And then we have an air traffic controller, Holly is her name, that's from the Houston Center, I guess you'd say.
Right.
And I think talking with her probably had the most feedback from more people wanted to query her to find out what it's like living behind the scenes. That was probably my favorite of the talks.
I think so too. I think that it's something that was different than people got at any other aviation event they've been to. And she was very candid.
Right.
She was direct. She was clear in her answers, just what you expect an air traffic controller to be.
Yeah, it was. It was great. It was funny sometimes too, and I didn't expect that. But
Right.
It was because But anyway, M class was great.
It was,
and we use this opportunity to make this podcast because you're here, and she was open about her life and what she's got going on. You're here to let us see what's going on inside yours. I appreciate you being here for M class and being here for that. How did we end up at NBAA? Because that's where I want to get to. I'm so interested. When I think of NBAA, or I guess you've got a history behind it with associations in the Washington, D.C. area. NBAA is there. When I think of NBAA, I think of two things. I think of a very positive side, and I think of a very negative side. And by that, I mean that NBAA does not have small guys in their window, in their view. They have big guys, the big jets, big everything. But they do.
So right. That is the perception. And there's a perception that it's the National Big Airplane Association, not the National Business Aviation Association. The reality is different. The issues that NBA works on and the passion that NBA brings to the table is for anybody who's operating any aircraft for business purposes.
Right.
And Piper PA-46 fits in there just like a Gulfstream G650ER does, or actually G700, the latest that they have. So it's, and candidly, if you fly a Cessna 182 and you're listening to this podcast, you fit in there as well.
Right.
It is for everybody flying for business purposes.
Right.
And yes, a lot of the convention, a lot of the imagery from NBA is that corporate jet appearance. But the reality is the issues apply very much to the folks who are operating as owner-flown aircraft for business purposes. That's a distinguishing factor, is for business purposes.
It was interesting here. We had M-class at our facility at the Lufkin Airport today. Again, a lot of airplanes, 47 PA-46s, and we're not talking about everybody else that came in. Mm-hmm. That, for our little old airport, that's a lot of airplanes that came in. But one of the things that happened earlier is they found out that a G500 or some big corporate jet was coming in, and they were like, "We need y'all to move 10 airplanes for us because we got a G whatever coming in." And we were like, no, no, we can't. But there's that idea of they're more important. Well, in the fabric of aviation, they are important. That's a big airplane with big people bringing big money into town, people that matter. Big corporations come in. They don't fly in Aeronca Champs. They fly in big airplanes. That's important. At the same time, there's 47 PA-46s on the ground. That's really important. That's an impressive feat to have that many airplanes, as is the guy that's flying the Cessna, as is the guy that's flying the helicopter, as the guy. It's a fabric of aviation, and we got to have every bit of it to have a healthy community. NBAA is clearly for the big guys, but that doesn't mean they're against the little guys.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And NBA does a lot of work to try to include the little guys. They actually have created an Owner Pilot Association coalition, and that's the first time for TBMOPA, Honda jet owners, Embraer, Citation jet pilots, PMOPA, twin Cessna flyers, Cirrus owners, pilots. We get together a couple times a year and we share best practices, and they've created that opportunity for us to engage. Those are face-to-face opportunities. We also get together via teleconferences a couple times a year. We have our safety committee chairs talking with each other about safety programs so we can collaborate, because what we do in the PA-46 community isn't all that different than what the TBM folks are doing. So if we can do things together, that helps a lot.
It's way better. It's way better. I tell you, there's sometimes an us and them scenario, and I tell you, it's way more gathering and more important that we gather and have a collective voice. I mean, the TBM people, love them, great airplane. They're passionate about their airplane. We need to be partners in what we're doing. Same thing with the King Airs and anyway, the whole thing. What did you do for NBAA?
Yeah, so I started in NBAA as the manager of tax and finance issues.
Okay.
So I worked with the tax committee on tax policy.
I can't think of something more boring.
So it's funny that you say that, because it's actually it's interesting because it's challenging, right? So it was a different area, and it wasn't what I necessarily wanted to do at NBA. It was just the job that was open at the time.
Yeah.
And what's funny about it is that I was working in the telecom association, and the CEO of the telecom association said, "You can't move to the next level unless you have telecom industry experience." So I'd have to leave.
You'd have to leave and go do
work
that
for
and
one
come
of
back.
right, and then come back. And that wasn't my passion. I enjoyed working with the volunteers, but it wasn't my passion. Aviation was my passion. What was cool about NBAA is, even though I wasn't a CPA, which was in the requirements of the job description, even though I wasn't a flight instructor, which was in the requirements of the job description, they were open to something different, because what they realized they really needed was somebody who worked with volunteers, could work with committees. And that's what I'd been doing in my nonprofit jobs before that. And some of the folks who were on the tax committee when I joined in 2003 are some of my closest friends today, just like I'm forming friendships in the PA46 community that I know 20 years from now, we're going to be in touch and do things together and have fun. And it's just a really great group of people. And I call the tax committee people my people. now they'll be left behind with the PA46 people eventually. but they're really good people who, again, for me, that passion of working in nonprofits was around people who are making a difference and contributing, and the tax committee was doing that. So it wasn't about the tax policy. That didn't excite me, although it was pretty cool to be able to get involved and go to Capitol Hill and explain things from a perspective of why this is important to the community, to be involved in state legislature initiatives to do away with sales and use taxes for aircraft parts and repair and things of that nature. I mean, that's cool when you can make a difference, because that translates to aviation being more accessible for people and more valuable for people.
Okay, so let's talk for just a little bit, because something came to mind, and I got a theory, and I want you to prove it or disprove it.
Okay.
If you talk to people that work with volunteers, there's a part of working and managing, leading volunteers, organizing volunteers, dealing with volunteers, that you end up with a group of people that are not passionate, not driven by the buck, not driven by the dollar. And it's like herding cats and just really hard. You talk to many pastors and many people that work at volunteer places. It's just really, really hard, except for the fact that many of those volunteers that are there are the most passionate and the most willing to go the extra mile. And is it that way? Is it worth it because of the super passionate?
It's absolutely worth it because of the super passionate people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talk more about that.
Yeah. Well, so I think that, there's kind of a rule that 20% of the people do 80% of the work. Happens in the corporate environment. It happens in the nonprofit environment as well.
It's a rule across so many things, or so many considerations. The 20/80 rule absolutely applies.
Right. And so in my experience, the 20% of the people who are doing 80% of the work, they are the super passionate people. They're the ones who are rolling up their sleeves, dedicating their time, sometimes investing their own money to make things happen.
Absolutely.
And it's worth it. It is absolutely worth it. And I do that as a volunteer, as well as have the opportunity to work with these incredible volunteers who are doing all of this. There will be people who want to be there just to have it on their resume, that they're serving on this committee or on that committee, or on this board of directors. Those people, they're not, fortunately, not part of our community. That's, in my experience, we don't have a high level of engagement in terms of 20 people sitting on a committee with 16 of them doing nothing. We have fewer people on the committees with everybody doing something. And that's really cool.
And that's where the fun is.
Exactly.
When you're working with 20%ers, because when you're working with if you look at PMOPA today, it's a volunteer organization. There's a couple of people paid. That's about it. Everybody else is donating their time, effort, energy, because they see that we're stronger together collectively.
Yep.
And we're needed collectively. If we're not here, if PMOPA were not here, PMOPA would be severely missed. And that's the secret, is that we need it to be healthy because it's needed, it's wanted. We would be missed in the marketplace if PMOPA were not doing the work it's doing.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And obviously I'm biased when I say that. You're less biased because you're a member of the community. I believe that the volunteers are a force multiplier for us doing good for the entire community.
Right. Talk to that person right now that's out there doing absolutely nothing in the PMOPA world. They own a PA 46. Talk to that person that's doing nothing but thinking to themselves, I could do something.
Well, first, I want to thank them for being a member, because that is something.
Being a member
is something.
Okay.
The people who are not members and who are in the PA 46 community, I would strongly encourage them to join the association.
And I would too. It's hard for me to fathom somebody owning an airplane of this value. You're somewhere between 300 and 4.5 million.
Right.
Why would anybody own an airplane in this place and not be a member of the singular most important group? There's not another group. One of the glories of this group is that we haven't broken off to have different other groups. There hasn't been a church split.
Not yet. And I hope there won't ever be.
And there won't be if I have anything to do with it, because it's a volunteer organization. You don't like it, I mean, jump in and change, because you can be that person that jumps in the game. If you don't like the way it's going, well, roll your sleeves up, because the people that are making things go are not getting paid.
Right. Exactly. And I think there's a place for all ideas. And if somebody doesn't like the way we're doing the convention, you know what? They can do their own M-class and bring the people who want to have it that way together, and we'll help facilitate that as long as it's within certain parameters. It can't compete with one of our scheduled events and things of that nature, but we want opportunities for people to engage with each other and to do good by each other, to raise the safety bar within our community. And we're open to new and different ideas of how to do that. That's one of the things I really enjoy about this board of directors, is that, and one of my philosophies is, when you're working with nonprofit organizations comprised of volunteers, I'm not here for me. I'm here to serve them. And the board feels the same way. And if members have ideas about how things can be done differently, I want to hear those ideas so that we can think about how we can do things differently. I had some really good recommendations from longtime members in the association today about speakers they would like to hear, events they would like us to put on. And that's exciting to me, because if we can do that and they feel like they're getting more value out of membership, that means that there are probably 5 or 10 other people, 20, 30 other people who think the same way. They just haven't spoken up about it.
That's right. All right, we're going back to NBAA.
Yeah,
you weren't the tax guy for long. You did something else.
So
where was your highest job? I say highest. Where was your most influential job? What was the last job? Maybe that's the right way to say it.
The last job. Okay. So before I get to that, I've had a lot of great opportunities in NBA to do different things. So I started in tax policy, but then quickly moved to doing operational work and served on a couple FAA rulemaking committees. So worked closely with I created a regulatory issues advisory group, and we met quarterly with the FAA chief counsel to talk about regulations and how things work or don't work for the business aviation industry. And being able to, again, get the volunteers together to make a difference was pretty empowering and powerful. So I really enjoyed that part. One thing, just kind of, this is a little nerdy, so probably edit this out of the interview.
We like nerdy.
When I started at NBA, one of the first weeks on the job, there was a tax program, and they talked about the Schwab interpretation. Charles Schwab had asked the FAA, when I fly on Charles Schwab Company's airplane, I would like to pay Charles Schwab Company back for my personal use of the aircraft. And the FAA said, no, that would be illegal charter. Like, what? This is Charles Schwab flying on Charles Schwab's airplane. Like, why would this be? I get it. I get how the rules are structured, but common sense, isn't it in the best interest of the shareholders? And how is it hurting aviation safety if the guy writes a check to the company versus goes through a imputation of income process and pays taxes on that imputed value? So I went to a chief counsel and said, nope, it's illegal charter. Went to another chief counsel. No, it's illegal charter. Went to another chief counsel. And there were a whole series of chief counsels. And there was one who had been general counsel at Continental Airlines, business guy, sat in a meeting with him, presented the argument, and he said, you're exactly right. We should find a way to make that happen. the assistant chief counsel of regulation got bright red in the face, saying, no, we can't do it for these reasons. He turned to her and he said, I want you to work with Mike, and I want you to find a way to make this happen. And within 6 months, I got a letter from the FAA, a chief counsel interpretation that they still talk about in the tax conferences, the Nichols interpretation. And it outlines how it is that an executive from a company is able to reimburse the company up to the fully allocated cost of using the aircraft for a personal flight, which is great for shareholders. It's great for the executive. It's great for the company.
It's great for PMOPA today because we got a whole bunch of people that own businesses inside here that are benefiting from the Nichols what?
Interpretation. Yeah.
The Nichols interpretation. That's got to make you feel good.
That was pretty cool.
I don't think there's a Casey interpretation of anything. I don't know.
Most people don't want an FAA legal interpretation in their name, but
it's got to feel good. I mean, but it is a point. The point behind it is you were in the right place at the right time with the right skill set to be able to influence things because you were able to go through a series of no's to get to the yes that made things happen.
Exactly. And also it made sense. So I just had to find the right person who was willing to think outside of the box and make it happen. So I progressed in doing tax operational, and what I found to be really enjoyable and had some skill set in was putting educational events together. And ultimately, Ed Bolin, who's the CEO of NBAA, put me with responsibility for the conferences and seminars line of business. And then I had people working for me doing tax and FAA regulatory and operational type stuff. And I focused on building a line of business. And then from there was asked to run a trade show in Shanghai, China. It was an underperforming line of business with great opportunity. My first year running that show, leading the team, turned it to a profitable show. Had the opportunity to go to China 25 times, which was really cool.
You got
really
the
exciting.
Air Miles
I do.
award.
I'm a million miler in United Airlines.
Going to China 25 times.
Exactly.
Not everybody can say that.
No. And I'll tell you, in the beginning, I didn't care for it because I like free market economies. I very much like competition. I like having a democracy. That is not China.
Not any of that. Yeah, that's right.
And so I had a bit of a mental block, and I had an opportunity to go to Beijing for meetings with people from the Chinese government and also the Asian Business Aviation Association. And the meetings ended early, and there was an opportunity to fly home, but I looked at the cost of it and thought, I'll just stay in the hotel room and work for a day. And Ed Bolin, the CEO of NBA, said, you can stay for an extra day and fly home on your scheduled flight, but you can't work in the hotel room. And he turned to our chief representative in Asia and said to Jason, I want you to get Mike a car and a driver and a tour guide, and he's going to go see the highlights. And I was standing on the Great Wall the next morning, and oh my God, what an incredible opportunity to be at one of the 7 wonders of the world, to look out and see the landscape. And then from there went to Tiananmen Square and some of the other highlights in Beijing. And then I flew home that evening, and I was like, that was mind-blowing. Like the fact
it was totally worth it
that I had this opportunity, and that was a mental shift for me. And sometimes when I'm in a place that I'm figuring things are challenging and is this the right thing, I look for that mental shift. And if I can find that mental shift, the doors open up and there are great opportunities. And from that point forward, I wanted to get the rest of the team inspired about going to China. So we started doing cultural training and some tour activities. We did a cooking class and learned how to make xiaolongbao soup dumplings. And I had great fun with it.
I bet you did.
Yeah.
You did some cool stuff here with NBAA. At some point, you shifted over to PMOPA.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, so I was.
Oh, you got hired. I know what happened.
Yeah, well, right, exactly. So I left NBA in the end of April of 2021, so almost 4 years ago. I was senior vice president of strategy and innovation, and what I loved about that job was that I was inspiring a culture of innovation in the team and ran an innovation committee. We did a bunch of innovation exercises and came up with new business ideas. What I didn't enjoy about the job was that I was tasked with bringing in these advanced air mobility, as they call them now. They used to call them urban air mobility, advanced air mobility aircraft that would eventually be no pilots flying them. Those people were not aviation people by and large. They were tech people. And I was having a mental challenge about how can I make this work? How is this going to fit within the business aviation community? We had a really cool showing at the convention. where we had in 2019 a whole host of these aircraft on the show floor, prototypes, concepts. It was such a drain, such a challenge, and I couldn't get that mental shift to say that's something that I really embraced. Yet I knew that the board did. I knew that the CEO of NBA did. And I decided I want to do something else. I had turned 50, was going to either stay at NBAA and deal with this challenge that I didn't feel was aligned with my interest, which is piloting aircraft, not having technology fly the airplanes.
Right.
And I decided I was going to take a summer off. So I left NBAA the end of April 2021, took a summer off, set up a consulting business, and I thought, I'm going to write a book for the industry, and I'm going to pick and choose clients that I want to work with. So I got to work on the book. We're close to being finished with it now, a few years later. It's called The Business Aviation Book, Leading Operational Excellence. And we originally I was going to write it myself. Then I decided, this book is partly about leadership, and a big thing about leadership is, and you talked about this in M class with your health situation and needing to step away for a little bit and your team stepping up. Part of it is having a team. They have different strengths, different skill sets. They're able to bring something to the table. I thought, I can get familiar with all of these subjects. Aircraft maintenance, for instance. I've never turned a wrench in my life, but I can research it. But then I'm going to have a chapter that's written by somebody who's researched it. I went to a guy who was a director of maintenance for years and a leader in the business aviation community. I said, hey, Mark, would you be interested in writing this chapter? He said, yeah, I think that'd be great. So I did that with many of the chapters. I wrote several myself, and I have a guy that has experience in the business aviation industry. He and I have divided and conquered, and we're compiling the book. So we're the editors of the book, if you will. We've written a couple chapters each, and the book will be out this summer is the plan. We have a couple chapters left to do. And
I expect a copy.
Yes.
You already know I'm a pretty prolific reader. I read
50 to 70 books a year, you said.
That's right. I do. There's been years where I've done more than that. So yes, I read a lot. So I expect a copy of this book,
great.
Signed, sealed, delivered. Okay.
Very good. Very good. I promise. So the chapter on aviation taxes likely will put you to sleep.
There you go. Good.
So did some consulting, and then got a phone call from a guy named John Grenmaye. And John said, the executive director of MMOPA left, and we have an interim executive director. We'd like to offer her a COO role, but we want a CEO, somebody who will work with the board on strategy and safety programs and things like that. And I was familiar with the owner pilot associations. I was familiar with MMOPA, although not as much as I knew CJP or TBMOPA.
Right.
And I thought, it doesn't hurt to have a conversation. I loved the PMOPA, well, then MMOPA board. I was so impressed with the people on the board. I mean, people like John Sisk and Dave Bennett, John Grenmaye, John Walters, Victor Rivas, Kim Coriat. I mean, just really good, thoughtful people who cared about the aircraft, cared about the community. And every question that I asked them, the answer was compelling and interesting. And I thought, if they offer me the job, it's going to be hard to say no. And by the way, I had COVID when I was interviewing with John Grenmaye and Ryan. Yeah, so I'm sitting there like, this is kind of funny. I put on a coat, a dress shirt, and a tie. But it was July. It was summertime. It was hot in DC. And I'm sitting there with COVID, sweating, and I'm on this interview, and there was a connectivity issue with Google Meet. So I had to disconnect and come back on, and John Grenmaye and Ryan Altman were laughing. And I was like, what's going on? Like, we're just laughing at you because you put a suit on for this interview. I was like, I have shorts on.
Trying to cool off somehow.
Exactly. That was a great call. Then I had interviews with the rest of the board, and every conversation was as enjoyable, if not more, than the one before. And when John Grenmaye called and said, well, we'd like to offer you the position of CEO, I was like, oh my goodness. Okay. Yes, this would be a great experience. So I thought I wasn't planning to go back to work full time. And yet it's been a great opportunity. And working with the board, working with Kim Coriat as chair of the safety committee, and all of the committees and the volunteers, it's been great working with John Walters was the chair of the events committee. Now it's Tom Arnold, and everybody brings their own ideas, their own skills, their own passion to it. And that's what's cool about working with. It's not stagnant. It's not stale. It's not the same thing. And if you look at the convention agenda, just glance at it, you'll see commonality, right? We're going to have breakout sessions for each of the airframes. We'll have avionics updates. We're going to have safety programming, but the topics change, the presenters change, and it's a focus area of what's important in the community. I mean, if we took Manny Cassiano and the safety and accident review off the agenda just to have something new, fresh, and different, we'd have a huge void in our programming for the convention. So there are some things that are static and constant, and there's good value in that. But everybody brings something different to the table, and the way it unveils is always right for the time.
Okay, so for the person that's a PMOPA member, what does your day-to-day life look like? I don't mean what time you're getting up and what you're having for breakfast, but
right.
What's a CEO do?
Yeah, so my primary responsibility is to execute on the strategic plan that the board adopted, and to oversee the day-to-day operations of the association. So when I started, Jenna Reed was the chief operating officer, and it was great working with Jenna. She's such a people person and be engaged with all the members, know all of their names, know their spouses' names, their kids' names, their dogs' names. And that's a wonderful skill set. I was focused on the programs that we were doing. So when she decided to leave PMOPA and focused on the ad sales for the magazine, then that left a void because we needed somebody to do the day-to-day member services. So I hired an association management company with the board's authorization to do this. We have somebody named Sarah Flatley who interacts with the members. So if you email membership@pmopa.com or you call the hotline for membership, Sarah is typically the person who's going to respond to that. And then they also have somebody who does accounts payable, accounts receivable, and a CFO. So we have really good financial controls in place that, as far as I can tell, really hadn't existed in the association before, but things that I believe in for corporate governance and good steward of the association's funds and resources, et cetera. So having that infrastructure in place allows me the time to focus on programs. So right now, this time of year, most of my days are spent on events. So working with the convention committee to put together the agenda. I was actually working on that at the end of M class today while you were doing Q&A. I had an year on Q&A, and I was writing session descriptions so I can send the draft over to Chuck Olson because we're planning to open registration for the convention on May 1st, and it's good to have the agenda up there so people can, it's going to be a great event. I think there's a lot of trust for that, but it's nice to see the agenda, especially if somebody hasn't been there before. Working on marketing for our regional events. We're doing a regional event in Boise, Idaho at the end of the month.
Coming up soon.
Yeah, it's coming up on April 25th and 26th. That'll be at Western Aircraft. So great to work with a Piper dealer and service center in producing this event. And then we have about 100 members in Europe. And PMOPA, to the best of my knowledge, hasn't done an activity in Europe before, an educational program in Europe before. So
officially, I agree.
Right.
Like, there's been some one-off things that aren't sanctioned, if that's the right word.
Training events.
Somebody's gone over there and held something. Yes, I agree.
Right. So we have a great community over there. And we, 2 years ago, went to the Aero Friedrichshafen show and hosted an event in the Piper stand. That was a reception, and it gave us an opportunity to engage with members. We surveyed members in Europe asking what they would like. And I really believe in listening to what members have to say. It's your association. I'm here to serve you. Tell me what you want. And as long as it fits within our strategic plan, which is important, then we'll try to make that happen. So our members said, we would like to do a one-day, predominantly safety-focused event in the southern part of Germany or the western part of Austria. And if I had just done something on my own, I would have done a one-day safety event in the southern part of Germany or western part of Austria, just because part of my heart's from that part of the world since I did my internship in Germany.
Not a bad place to be.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Expensive fuel, but other than that.
Well, yeah, the taxes are kind of crazy, but it's a beautiful part of the world to be in. So I was pretty excited about that. And I'm working with a great member, Rolf Adam, who's based out of Munich. And Rolf's working with me on, we collaborated on the agenda and the event logistics, and We have about 100 members who are based in Europe, and the room can fit about 25 people. I'm happy to stand in the threshold of the room the entire day to give a seat to somebody else, but I think it's going to be a sold-out event for us. And then one of the big things that we'll do at that event is ask our members in Europe, tell us, what do you want next? How can we serve you better? From there, in June, we're going to go to Montreal, and we're going to have a half day with Pratt & Whitney, tour the facility, and then we're going to do a day of educational content as our last regional event for the year. Then a week later, our members are going to be in Olathe, Kansas. For the first time, we're doing Garmin training. Garmin does training many days out of the year that anybody can just sign up for. But if you went on your own, you might be sitting with somebody who flies a Cessna 152 and somebody else who's flying a Phenom 300
or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
So this will be just for PMOPA members. So we essentially have their training facility for our members for the entire day. For folks with the GTN product, the G1000 NXI, or the G3000 is what they're able to accommodate for us. So we have a limited number of slots available, and that'll be a really cool opportunity for people to connect with that focus on avionics training. And, it's been fun. I've talked to a lot of members who've spent $250,000 on their panels, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more. And I ask them, how did they use their panel? And usually it's direct to.
That's right. That's right.
It's like, wow, you have all that incredible technology available to you.
Don't use all the functionality.
Yeah.
I agree.
So
wholeheartedly. I have been to Europe a couple of times and done training over there, and I think it's interesting that whenever Manny does his safety brief, he briefs on airplanes all over the world.
He does.
Because airplanes all over the world matter. You can't have a failed Europe or a failed South America and define success. Wherever there's a PA-46, they're flying PA-40. The airplane doesn't care where it's flying.
It doesn't know where it's flying.
It doesn't know where it's flying. And so the point behind it is those are brethren, if you want to think of it that way. I've always thought of the rules that apply to a European-based airplane. Somebody that owns it over there, they don't sometimes have an insurance mandate, sometimes do. They have some different rules as far as EU and what they do. But there's lesser training. And I think it's good for PMOPA to be over there and doing stuff. And I think there's a gap that we're filling. So I think that's good. Speaking of gaps you're filling, if you look at that, I've been a part of PMOPA now for more than 20 years. I've seen a lot of presidents. I've seen a lot of CEOs. I've seen a lot of things, safety initiatives and things happening. But I'm telling you right now, the PMOPA has been very active with safety initiatives, and there's just a lot going on. All this is going under your watch care. Like, your plate's full. I mean, as near as I can tell, it's as full as could possibly be. But we have a lot of initiatives going down right now. I think there's some people in this space that are saying, yeah, we've seen initiatives come and go with limited impact and limited success. What makes you think that the initiatives that are happening now, for which I fully believe in and am an advocate for, why is it different this time?
I think it has to be different this time because of the number of accidents that we had in our community over the last year. And fortunately, knock on wood, 2025 has been a little bit better. There was just a runway excursion yesterday. No fatalities, but we don't like to see any accidents.
Before I leave that, there's been a bit of a, if you look back, I think the number's 31 fatal accidents in a 15-month period.
That's not acceptable, is it?
No, it's not. It's horrific.
Exactly.
It's almost been wetted down, that if you look at the numbers on a percentage basis, I mean, put them on a graph, that it's, well, the number, there's a way to make numbers look good or look acceptable. But at the end of the day, in a 15-month period, 31 people lost their lives in a PA-46 airplane due to a myriad of accidents ranging from straight up stall spins to power rollbacks to flying into a thunderstorm to flying into severe turbulence to just a whole bunch of different things, all which are preventable, all of which are sad. Some of them are the fact that there was 6 or 7 people in one PA-46,
Right.
5 people in another, just these big numbers that, I can think of 2 accidents where there was 5 people in each one, and one of them where there was 7. That's ridiculous. And so the numbers are big as far as fatalities for the number of accidents. And so that makes it look good, but it's still, at the end of the day, there's 31 people that died in the course of 15 months. And absolutely horrific in terms of the community has to do something. The community, PMOPA is the lead, but the people that fly M-class airplanes need to look at this and go, we can't do that again.
That's exactly right. And they can't think that it's not going to happen to them, because it could happen to them.
Right.
It could happen to any one of us.
That's right.
So we have to be very diligent in how we're approaching training and proficiency. And PMOPA has built the tools. Again, the volunteers, and Joe, you served on the steering committee that created the MSIP program, which is the M-Class Standardized Instructor Pilot Program, recognizing instructors in our community who commit to using our new M-Class Elevate training program. And when I say our, I mean these are products of the PMOPA Safety and Education Foundation that were paid for by the Safety and Education Foundation, that the SEF is making available to anybody in the PMOPA membership for free, because why charge for something when we need to make a difference, if that is going to be a barrier to entry for folks.
And while we're at it, the money that goes to the Safety and Education Foundation comes from people that donate money.
That's right. Volunteers donating money.
It's not only volunteering their time, but it's the people that are writing checks. A lot of that comes from the convention. At the end of the convention, there's a wonderful little money-making venture, if you want to call it.
That's right.
And it's lovely.
It's the generosity of donors to contribute items for the silent and live auction, like you and Deanna. Thank you. And it's
we did, but we didn't do it as much as others. I mean, we played a part, but there was a lot of people writing big checks and doing good stuff.
And Heather Cannon has done a phenomenal job as our auction chair, and greatly appreciate all of her efforts.
Heather has this infectious personality. She's a gatherer.
Yes.
She's not a repeller at all. She's a gatherer.
Yeah.
And she knows, and she's done a great job gathering.
She has.
Yeah.
So it's the donors who provide the items, and also the generous participants who write those checks to buy those items and have some great experiences and products that they get to take home with them. But getting back to the training programs, we built those training programs. It's now up to the community to use those training programs.
Yeah, embrace them.
Right.
They're there. It's just, I'm going to take one, the Master Aviator program. We built it, and I want to say in 2017 or somewhere.
I think 2018 was a build. 2019 was the first.
There you go. My fingerprints are all over it.
Yes.
I am very biased in the sense that I think it's just a wonderful program that didn't get embraced completely, but did get embraced by some. And if you look at those numbers, the Master Aviators are not crashing airplanes. And therefore, there's something to be said behind that. Y'all just got through revamping the Master Aviator program, which I think is cool. I looked at what y'all did. Man, what a neat idea. Somebody put a lot of thought and present. But let me just tell you folks out there, if y'all don't embrace the Master Aviator program, it'll have zero impact. If you embrace it, it will have impact. And so the point behind it is everybody listen to this program, listen to this podcast, needs to go embrace the Master Aviator program, which is going to require time, energy, money. But at the end of the day, you're going to be a better pilot.
Well, and that's the most important thing. At the end of the day, you're going to be a safer pilot, right? So I really think that the Master Aviator program answers a lot of questions. One of the questions that I get from people all the time is, what can I do to make my insurance premiums go down? Well, train, not just the required recurrent training, which is important, but more training and proficiency. Fly your airplane. If you're going to spend money, avionics upgrades are great. They're fantastic. But if you're only going to press direct to, probably better to put more money into fuel in your airplane and just fly it more and fly it safely. Fly it proficiently. Go out with an instructor more often and find your weak areas, and then focus on making those weak areas strengths for you. And if you do those things and you document your training, you have the minimum number of hours as the program requires, which is for most levels 100 hours of flight time in PA-46 in the previous year. You're going to be recognized as a Master Aviator. You're going to be a safer pilot, and you're doing what your insurance company wants you to do, which is to train more and have proficiency. When you do those things, then the insurance company will look favorably upon you. You're going to be a better risk for them than somebody who doesn't.
That's right.
So we create the program, and I was thrilled that we had 54 people, the largest class ever that we recognized as Master Aviators at the convention in 2024. And I challenged the audience. Every pilot in that room, every PA-46 owner and pilot in that room should have been standing on the stage with us. If you have a PA-46 and you can not fly 100 hours a year in your normal course of business or pleasure flying, you're probably going to be pretty close to it. Why not round out the extra 15 or 20 hours with some more instruction time?
That's right.
Or taking another trip because you want to fine-tune your use of checklists. Or we have this incredible quick reference handbook that Mark Spitzer volunteered his time, came up with the idea, volunteered his time, created them for each of the PA-46 variants, with the jet prop and the M700 coming very soon. And now we'll have something for every single variant available. Take that. Just have a safety pilot with you and use the QRH. How would you use it if this situation happened or that situation happened? And burn more fuel while you're doing it. Get proficient while you're doing it. Get that 100 hours, participate in the program. Because it would be pretty amazing if we had a PMOPA convention where the only people in the audience sitting at the tables while we were recognizing the Master Aviators would be the vendors and the companions.
What would be really fun, we talked about, if you didn't have Manny Cassiano giving his briefing, what would be nice if you didn't need Manny Cassiano to give his briefing because all these other things are working.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'm a big fan of the Master Aviator program, and I think it's something that everybody ought to participate in.
Yeah.
The other one is the M-Class Standardization Instructor Pilot Program, for which I was a part of I was a volunteer for that drive, or that
You might have been a little
creation.
reluctant in the beginning.
I was reluctant for a number of reasons. If I'm being completely forthright, one of the last things I think we need is something that's standardized. And I didn't like the word standardized. I still don't like the word standardized. I don't think everybody needs to do the same thing, because every airplane's so different. This is such a hard community to be in. It's not like we're 737s and everybody's doing the same thing, or we're military and everybody's got to. That word standardized is just so hard. The place that I converted myself over to it was the idea that we need to get instructors in the community, and we need instructors to be teaching of one accord. It's an emphasis on the instructor,
Yes.
and standardization within the instructor community,
Yes.
more so than standardization within the pilot community. In other words, I'm warming up to I'm a standardization instructor pilot in the military. I did 27 years of being a standardization instructor pilot. Actually, I did 24 as a SIP and 3 where I was just not an instructor.
Pilot.
So I'm real familiar with the standardization. I get it. I'm all there. The problem that we got in the PMOPA community, in my opinion, is that we have people that will migrate into the instructional capacities in our world, come from a different airplane in a different way, migrate in, not know what they're talking about, and begin teaching things that are not correct. They may be correct in another airplane, but they're not correct in ours. And that which is first taught, or that which is taught the loudest, often has the longest. People remember that. And of course, they remember the wrong thing.
Right.
I think it's worthwhile for people like me that have been here a while, and others. There's Bill, Deanna, you can go back into what I call the legacy instructors: John Mariani, Mary Bryant, Ron Cox, Rick Tutt, Dave McVinney, just a whole bunch of these people that honestly I respect so deeply. But for the longest time, those pilots had it was very much a kingdom mentality. This is mine, and these are my slides, my stuff, my thing. And I've been doing everything I can in the past to push that away. I put all my stuff out online. I put all my stuff out because I don't want there to be a kingdom mentality. I want people not to do it my way, but to have my data. Mm-hmm. And because I think if people have good data, they're going to be able to make a better decision, and they're going to teach better. Mm-hmm. And so I like things like there's the Mirage book written by the same guy that did the
Mark Spitzer.
Mark Spitzer. I've never met Mark Spitzer that I know of.
Yeah.
What a great guy for coming up with all this stuff that he's just willing to give his information out.
Right.
I just think that's just a brilliant thing. And I see the MSIT program as a way to let the people that actually know, that are at the long end of the tail of their career in this world, in this space, meaning the PA-46 world, and to be able to impart that on new instructors, because we're going to have new instructors.
We totally need new instructors. And that's where I like the word standardization, because it provides the template, if you will. I mean, to me, what's standardized is the curriculum, the process, the procedures. The last two things that I want out of this training program, one is for instructors to be robots, where you can't be yourself. I had to fire my first 2 flight instructors to find the 3rd flight instructor who was a gem. And one of the things that was amazing about Ruth was that she had this vast toolbox that if she tried teaching me something one way and it didn't work, she knew another way to try to teach, and she found what made it happen. And there are going to be clients who gel really well with you. Maybe they don't, and they gel really well with Deanna. Maybe they don't, and they gel really well with Rick or John or Mary or any of the other folks out there. I don't want to change that, because I don't want to discourage people from training. I want people to be excited about training, because they're going to get an opportunity to learn from their esteemed instructor or from different esteemed instructors. The second thing I don't want to have happen is what my friends who fly jets for a living, and you alluded to this with the airlines or military, is they get the same content every single time. So the initial course is drinking from a fire hose, and then every recurrent training is exactly the same thing. That is the last thing that we want in this training program. So we have a curriculum. There is no requirement except for the instructor's judgment as to what the client needs to learn at any one particular lesson. Somebody coming from, I'm going to use an extreme example, the Cessna 172 to an M700 Fury is going to have a radically different training experience than somebody going from an M600 to an M700.
That's right.
So we don't want to prescribe what that training looks like, because the instructor is the one who has the expertise, the knowledge, the relationship with the client, the ability to assess their skills, and then make the determination as to where they're going to focus the training. The M-Class Elevate training program is structured with that flexibility. Similarly, when somebody comes back for recurrent training, what we want is for the instructor to ask the client, what's changed in your in your flying? What are you doing differently? Are you going to different locations? You might have somebody who bought a house in Aspen, and they need to have training in a mountainous environment. That would be really critical, right?
Or they live in Michigan and they're flying in ice all the time and all that, but they moved to Florida and now they're going to the Bahamas all the time. Right. Well, they need a little different training.
Right. Or somebody who's flying out of a non-controlled field, and their personal and business flying has been to largely non-controlled fields. And now they have a new customer who's based in Chicago, and they're going to be flying into really busy airspace. That's a different type of training they need. The M-Class Elevate training program provides for that flexibility. So while it's standardized, there's a structure, there's a training record. You will submit a training record after the training is completed, indicating what they've done. I will issue them a certificate of completion that looks very much like every other certificate of completion. It's standardized. The training isn't standardized in the sense that it needs to meet the customer where they are and where they need to go.
That's right. Well, I'm a proponent of it, and I helped create it. It was through blood, sweat, and tears. We did not agree on everything. We did come to consensus. Mm-hmm. The people that were in that room, great people. It was not just here's the way we're going to do it and everybody agree. Yeah. It was there were times where it was elevated voices, and it was
you're being so kind.
Yeah, I mean there were some
shouting matches.
There were some shouting matches, and there was some finger pointing, and some times where we ate lunch and I didn't want to eat lunch. Mm-hmm. And but at the end of the day, I think you ended up with some competitors, and I think you ended up with some people that are in the room that came up with a good product, and the good product's important. But again, it goes back to this is a voluntary organization. This is a voluntary, everything about it, where people have to make the choice to participate.
That's right.
And they got to make the choice to join. They got to make the choice to jump in. I'm telling you right now, PMOPA, I've seen a lot of initiatives come through at PMOPA and fail. In other words, where this has been tried before, where I think this one's got legs.
I think so too. And again, it was built around best practices. We didn't just come up with this idea and do it on our own. Right. We had Tom Turner from the ABS Safety Foundation join us for the first meeting. We had Jim Ratliff, who is very involved with COPA University and understands every mechanic of the COPA standardized training program at every single meeting. And I talked to Tom Turner a multitude of times in between. So while he joined us in person once, he wasn't disconnected from the program.
Oh no, he was
He was very much a part of it. And we took the best of the COPA program. We took the best of the ABS program. We looked at the Gamma standard for training. We looked at FAA FIT standard. We looked at the advisor circular on transitioning aircraft. And we built a training program that meets the needs of the PA-46 community. All of us in the room will agree it's not 100% perfect. There are some opportunities for improvement.
There will be tweaking in the future.
And that's to be expected. And there will be changes, best practices that we'll incorporate to the training as well. And we want people to tell us where it has an opportunity to improve. And the instructors will certainly be the front line for that. Yet it's better than nothing. And it's
not only better than nothing, it's good.
It's I
mean, it's just like this.
Selling it short. It is
together. This is a good program that's going to be tweaked. I mean, everything's tweaked,
right?
But this is a good one. This one's got legs and it has the ability. I'm telling you right now, and it couldn't be a more needed time, because what we need in the PA-46 community is instructors that actually know what they're talking about and are passionate about staying in the community,
yes,
and being here for a long term.
Yes.
And I will tell you, as one of the guys that helps to do this, I've had more people come to me in the last year that have said, "Hey, what you're doing is cool. How do I do that? And I now have a structure in which to plug them in."
Right, exactly. And you especially have that now that we've leveraged the part of the training program that was the second phase, which was the training center recognition.
Yeah, that was kind of fun.
I hope you were a little surprised that I had the nice plaque for you today.
It was incredible. We're going to find out. I don't know where we're going to put it. Basically, KC Aviation was announced as one of two. The other one's Archer Aviation, and Archer's great, and they got a wonderful program. They deserve it completely. There's two of us, Archer and KC Aviation, that were selected. You presented us today.
Yep.
And I think you're doing them
Tuesday. I'll see Jacob Meyer on Tuesday.
Probably no
in Mesa.
surprise to them. This will not be put out. By the time this podcast comes out, they'll have already been awarded, and it'll all be public domain.
Yep.
But ours was not public domain, and quite honestly, it was a surprise to not only me, but my whole team.
Oh, and excellent!
It was fun.
Good.
It was quite an honor to be, no pun intended, elevated to the position where we're at. Mm-hmm. I think we deserve it, and I think we're people that are committed to this market, and we want to do exceedingly well under the banner of the Elevate program. And in other words, we are participating.
So one of the cool things about this training center concept is now there will be a new level that's offered, or available, I should say, for the MSIPs, and that's the TCI, Training Center Instructor. So under your guidance and Deanna's guidance, you can bring people in who may have experience, will have to have experience in instructing aircraft, but not necessarily PA-46 aircraft. And you can teach them using the M-Class Elevate training program. They can start to do ground instruction under your supervision. They can eventually do recurrent training under your supervision.
We can walk them
mentor
up,
flying, and
we can walk them up the path
exactly,
to a full
from TCI to a CFI to a gold to a platinum.
That's right.
And we'll grow people within our community. And Jim Ratliff shared today that part of his responsibility working for Tidal Aviation is he's responsible for hiring and mentoring these instructors who come in, teach in the CSIP program to go get airline jobs. That's a short-term position for them. What we're excited about is the opportunity for people to do what you're doing and others in our community have done, which is make this your career choice. Being a full-time flight instructor is a wonderful career option. If you're entrepreneurial, business-oriented, if you're a people person, it takes a lot of skill sets to be a full-time flight instructor, especially if you're doing it on your own. Doing it through a program like this, where they can come in and work with somebody like you, stay with you for the long term. They don't have to worry about business development and insurance, headaches, and all these other things. You've already taken care of that for them.
But even so, beyond that, it's what's been kind of fun for me, and I've already been able to see it some, is that I think I don't know if legacy is the right word, but just my point of impact has been as an instructor. I think that as time progresses, one of my maybe better impacts, bigger, is going to be as an instructor of instructors and a person that's able to look back. I hope I'm able 20 years from now when I'm pushing a walker somehow. Hopefully I won't be pushing
40
a
years
walker.
from now.
40
Not
years.
20
Yeah,
years, right.
yeah, let's go 40 years. I'm pushing a walker somehow. But I'm hoping I'm able to look back and have a whole bunch of people that are instructing our community that I've been able to impact. Because I promise you, 40 years from now, PA-46s are still going to be flying around.
Yes.
Might even still be building them then. You never know.
Right.
There's a great airframe. I mean, Piper's kicking butt and taking names with these M700s. Now, you never know how long this is going to go.
And the M350 too. I mean, that's a bad boss.
It's great. And there's no doubt about it. But I think that these airplanes are going to be flying for a long time. And I'd like to be able to look back and say, I was a part of building instructors who those instructors built. People that are out there, operators out flying. I don't know. I don't know if bullish is the right word. I think this thing's got legs. Maybe that's the right way to say it. I think under your leadership and I'm almost say another thing. I think there's your leadership, but I think there's also that you really got a good board right
totally.
now.
Absolutely.
PMOPA has a good board of directors that are passionate and caring, and they're basically, I don't know if holding your feet to the fire is the right word.
Absolutely, every day.
They basically gave you the marching orders that we're going to make something happen, and things are happening within PMOPA. I think if there's a story of PMOPA today, is that the PMOPA of today is nothing like they were 10 years ago. There's still the culture's still there, the passion's still there, but there's a path forward now. Things are happening. There's initiatives. There's growth. There's people being encouraged to participate. There's a lot of good happening, and a lot of it has to do with you.
Thanks. It's kind of you to say. What I will say is that there's a really strong foundation. I mean, we have had great leaders of this association before on the board, as well as people who were in the executive director role prior to me joining this association. I couldn't do what I'm doing today if I weren't standing on their shoulders.
Right.
It's really been a long time. We couldn't start the association and do what we're doing today without having the almost 40 years of benefit of the association being there and being together as a community. So, but yes, it's exciting to do what we're doing today. I think there's a great opportunity to do well, to reduce our accident rate. I do believe that the community needs to come together and embrace it. As you said, actively participate in Master Aviator program. If you don't fly with an MSIP today, talk with your instructor about enrolling and becoming an MSIP.
That's right. Why
and,
are you
and
not?
Using the M-Class Elevate training program. And if they don't want to do it, probably time to think about maybe
Finding
it's an
one that
opportunity to, right. And that's going to benefit everybody if we come together, if we are focused on enhancing safety through these programs that PMOPA is making available.
So if you're listening to this program, number one, join PMOPA if you're not a joiner, if you haven't joined already. Number two, jump in the fray and be a volunteer. I promise you they'll find a place for you to fit in. Number three, there's a bunch of safety initiatives going on right now from the Elevate program, MSIP, Master Aviator program, lots of good things. There's a bunch of social stuff. I know I'm going on the Alaska trip, and me and Deanna are going. A bunch of other people are very excited.
Yeah.
There's cool stuff as far as regional events that are happening right now. The next one's happening in
Boise, Idaho,
with Toronto not long after, and over in Europe, you guys have not been forgotten. We're coming to help you there, and the convention's coming up.
It is.
There's just a lot happening right now. This is a great time to jump in the fray.
It is.
That's all there is to it. A lot of this has to do with you, Mike. I know you've been very humble and pointed at other people, but I appreciate the leadership you've provided and the horsepower you've provided to make a lot of this happen. If I had anything to say about you, you are a gatherer. You are a guy that was able to put some very bullheaded, stubborn men in the same room, and women. And the women are bullheaded and stubborn too, but you put a bunch of men and women in a room and gathered them together. I think you're going to be remembered as a guy who made a lot happen and a guy who brought a lot of people together. And that's that's pretty,
means a lot.
I'll tell you, that's a pretty good testimony right there.
Thank you.
Mike Nichols with PMOPA. Thank you for being a part of the Malibu Guru podcast and the KC Aviation YouTube channel. It's been great to have you here.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much, Joe.
So as you can see, there's a lot of cool people in PMOPA making things go. It's all led by Mike Nichols, and I'm super glad he came to be here. I'm glad you're here with the Malibu Guru podcast and the KC Aviation YouTube channel. For now, Joe Casey and
Mike Nichols.
signing out.